appears that we have all the board members on that are getting on. Hereby call the June 15th, the June meeting of the Newburgh IDA to order. Take a roll call. It's myself, Chairman present. Vice Chair Nancy Thomas is here. Treasurer Marlon Ramos. Chrissy, who I think got saddled with secretary, right, is here.
Yeah.
Adam's here, and Mike Kelly's here. And we have a number of guests. We have our council. We have Bob McLaughlin, Chair, Executive Director. I don't need to like name everybody that's on, right? I mean, yeah, I'm not going to. Proof of notice of meeting we have has been emailed to us. The notice of meeting was duly given. Everybody was sent a copy of our last meeting's minutes. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of it was April, right? We didn't have a May meeting.
No, it was May 18th.
It was May, yes.
Oh, fair enough. All right, never mind. I'll take a motion to approve the May 18th minutes.
I make a motion that we approve the May 18th minutes.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, second by Marlon. So motion by Nancy, second by Marlon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, opposed, abstaining, motion carried. Report of the treasurer, Mr. Ramos.
All right. So as of May 18, 2020, our opening balance was $254,114 with 59 cents. We had our regular deposits from those totaling $11,698 with 96 cents. Payouts, we had a total of $11,486 with 50 cents made out to Salvic Corp, BST and Code, Jacobitz and Gubitz, Kennedy and Graven, and again, Salvic Corp. With that means that we ended up our closing balance at $254,327 with 2 cents. Our application funds has stayed the same, $14,137 with 50 cents. Our tenants account, $2,400, and the money market account went from $749,016 with 87 cents to $749,143 with 75 cents.
All right. Doesn't look anything terribly exciting there. Do we? If that's it. I'll take a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Moved by Adam.
Second.
By Mike. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining, motion carried. Thank you. Chairman's report. So I have just two things. The first one is not on the agenda technically, but Sarah submitted her resignation as a board member. So we will have a vacancy. Technically, the way the bylaws read, she still continues to serve until she's replaced. But
Right.
Cher's working on getting a notice to be put out there. You know, I will say I know that I think Gerard Lang is still interested in serving. So I'll see if he wants to, just shoot an email and say just to go back to his resume he had submitted last time or has something new. But if anybody knows of any other people that might want to serve, feel free to let them know. And we'll keep the posting out there for, a couple weeks or something like that, whatever appropriate, just to keep the process going.
Austin, can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
If you serve on one board, are you allowed to serve on another board as well?
It depends, but with IDA, it's not like I served for a little while on the zoning board while I was an IDA member. It's just if you have anything come up that's interrelated, you don't want to like go too board heavy, Mike Kelly, but yeah, I mean, just because it gets too messy once you're around everywhere, but there's no reason, there's no reason not to, no technical restriction, like saying if you're on one board, you can't serve on another board. It all just comes down to the conflict. Then Bob, please correct me if I'm mistaken on that, or Aaron for that matter, if he's even listening. Wants to give us some free legal advice, that's cool. But
Sounds good to me. You're right on.
Right. Only half a municipal attorney, or a quarter, maybe. Not even half. Other than that, most of you know I'm on the Strategic Economic Development Advisory Committee. We had a pretty exciting win, if you want to call it that, where the city council signed a developers agreement for the Carney Group to do a development down on Colton Street, which will be pretty good for that neighborhood. And they've got some commercial space, some restaurant space that they're going to be putting in there as well, which sort of adds what's going on down there. And that was a result of RFP process that the committee had reviewed everything that went through and interviewed applicants and came down on Carney, and we're really happy about that. I'm pretty excited about that. Excuse me. Other than that, we're just sort of doing like internal work because we can't do it while the COVID pandemic is around, but we're still meeting and still discussing, like a vision for the city and what downtown development is going to look like. Working on what will be at some point, hopefully an application for the governor's DRI program, which has been put on hold for this year. And we're not sure how it's going to look, whether it's going to happen this year, or whether it's not, but we're working on that on behalf of the city. I'm not going to belabor that because we have people waiting for us and there's really nothing exciting beyond that. Bob, for your report, do you have anything other than what we have to talk about in exec?
No.
All right, so we'll do your report. We discuss pending potential, et cetera, litigation in executive session. And we'll do that at the end after anything else. Executive Director's report, Chair.
All right, so nothing really new from the past month. I have a contract renewal that I sent to the board. So my main focus, I guess, this month is to have that renewed, and then also the IDA Academy is virtual, and that's up next week for the 24th and the 25th. So I'm looking to attend that virtually. It's also quite a bit cheaper to do that virtually. So I've signed up for that. It's about $45 for the 2 days next week. So I sent that to the board. I haven't heard back from anybody if they wanted to attend, but if any of you do want to attend, please, let me know after the board meeting, and I can arrange that.
As far as the contract, just since we've got, I'd sort of rather address it, in a few months. So what I'd ask for is a motion to extend Cher's contract for 6 months as it stands currently, and then we can officially kind of renew it and review it in 6 months. If anybody would like to make that motion.
I'll move to extend the contract for 6 months.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Opposed, abstaining, motion carried. We'll get into the weeds if we have to on that, like I said, in 6 months. New business. All right. 104 Washington Street. So this is Mr. Hubner and Mr. Pierre, if he's still around. There he is. Hey, Philippe. I understand you guys have a presentation. We can do a screen share or something.
Yep, that's it. Hi, everyone. Thank you for sliding us onto the agenda. Appreciate it. Good to see some familiar faces. The IDA was essential to the last project that Charlie and I did in Newburgh, 96 Broadway. It was instrumental in a number of ways. The sales tax abatement was very helpful. The pilot, obviously, as well. And also just giving just general support from the IDA, I think really meant a lot to our lenders, to our investors, to the community in general, just demonstrating that this tool that the city has can be put to use. And so on the heels of that success, we have put in a response to the RFP put out by the Land Bank, 104 Washington. This is the building on Washington, just west of Liberty Street, north side of the street. It doesn't have a roof. It's kind of like 96 Broadway, just worse. I guess we have a soft spot for the heavy lift. So let me get my screen sharing here. Let me know if you guys you see something that looks like a presentation?
We do, yep.
Yeah.
Great. So this is the part of the building that you don't get to see from the outside. Not that it's any more reassuring from the outside, but this is what it looks like. Let me see, how do I change? How do I go to the next slide? Oh, here we go. All right. So here's what the picture on the right is, not the proposed structure, but it is an inspiration. We're proposing a 6-story building with 23 to 25 residential units. This will be 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, modern amenities, very, very similar in style to 96 Broadway. And on the ground floor, some live workspaces. We submitted the RFP as the developer, and we partnered with R.A. Siegel, who's an architect in Beacon. Many of you may know his work around the Hudson Valley Brewery. There was a series of old adaptive reuse properties that he designed. Bonnie Weber, who's kind of a leading developer on the Beacon side of the river, using interesting materials such as Core-10 steel, which is something we'd like to bring into this project. And Baxter Corporation as the builder. I'm sure you've seen their name around at 104 South Williams. Also work with Ronnie Weber, and they're very active in Poughkeepsie. So kind of just stepping up a notch the team from 96 Broadway. We learned a lot, and the idea is to bring mixed use, mixed income, density to the Liberty Street corridor. This is in keeping with the plan that the city has for this area. And the idea is to, we've celebrated Newburgh's rich architectural fabric, but with this project, we thought it'd be interesting to introduce a new build, a modern build with modern materials that shows that a different type of quality architecture can be done in Newburgh, and that new construction is part of the momentum that the city is looking to build for itself. So like I said, it's this is the Core-10 steel here on the side. It's a steel product that takes on this rust patina over time, and it's it morphs, and it's really cool. Richard Serra uses this type of steel over at his Beacon. Anyways, It would be mixed income, so market rate and some income restricted units. The restrictions are pretty liberal, and that's kind of what we like. There's a program called the PLP program that, Chrissy, I know you're familiar with. But the units would be restricted in general to 100% of the county AMI. And so that comes out to $116,000 a year. That's kind of, if you make more than that, then these units wouldn't be available to you. But that's a large swath of the market here in Newburgh. And there'll be 3 units that will be restricted to 60% of AMI. And that's basically just shy of $60,000 a year. So really not all that restrictive. I know some people think that the county or you're forced to take tenants when you do housing. That's just simply not the case. We have full control over who the tenants are, and they're asked to qualify based on the same metrics that they would for any other property. The bedrooms at this underwriting would be around $1,350, and a 2-bedroom would be around $1,650, which is market for new development or highly rehabbed properties in the city of Newburgh. On the ground floor, we'd look to either have we're shooting for a live workspace from anywhere from 2 to 4 spaces, which would be basically the whole ground floor. So bringing some commercial activity to the storefront, to the ground level, that really kind of loading up the rest of the building with residential. I'm going backwards. Going forward, this is a pretty big project for us, for Newburgh, I think, and just in general. It's about a $6.5 million build. Our partners and I would provide, our partners rather would just provide $1 to $1.5 million of equity. We've got a commitment from the CPC, which is the right partner, lending partner for this project. They've went on 86 Broadway. They're doing 104 South Williams. They're very active and they understand this type of build. The PLP program, which is the 120% AMI restriction, it's $50,000 a unit. It's a very helpful allocation of subsidy. And Madeline Fletcher, who was the executive director of the Newburgh Community Land Bank, with whom we have a very strong working relationship, is now heading up that department over at HCR at the state level. And she's very excited about this project. And we have the home funds, which is for those, that 60% AMI allocation would offer $500,000 towards the project to set aside those affordable units. And they're excited about the project too. So here's kind of a rendering on the right. We're bringing back the brick that was there before. This brown doesn't come off, but it really would look a lot more like this bright orange and kind of pop and evolve over time. But, you know, we're coming to the IDA for some assistance. Our lending partners are assuming that we will be able to deliver some sort of visibility with regards to property taxes going forward. And so we've worked through this with you guys once before, and we're hoping to do it again. And they would very much like it for the pilot to match the affordability period. That just kind of matches the income and expenses to stabilize the project on a long-term basis. We'd ask for the sales tax abatement again, as well as the mortgage reporting tax. Those are not de minimis and very helpful. In terms of jobs, I was talking to the Baxter people, and they were able to confirm just kind of broadly that there'd be about 40 construction jobs and about 10 indirect jobs based on their understanding of the project and their understanding of the job creation effects of a project of this size. So 40 construction jobs, 10 indirect jobs. Obviously that's, you know, something we'll have to drill in a little bit further, but obviously that's on our radar. And then, yeah, these are just kind of some of the layouts. They're really just for presentation purposes only, but this is the ground floor over here on the right, and the next set of floors have 5 units. There's an elevator shaft, there's laundry in the basement, and the top floor is set back with a beautiful deck overseeing the Hudson Valley and Storm King and all that. And that's basically the end of the presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Do me a favor and give me just a little more of an idea of what live work is going to look like, because, you know, we're obviously pretty job centric in what we do here. So more info on like what, you know, is somebody going to have like a literal store or whatever in the retail space and then just live behind it, or what's the deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of a TBD. They're here in this space, for example, in this particular layout, there's only 2 live workspaces, but as the discussion's been advancing, we realized that, you know, more work would be perhaps desired. And so this footprint, I don't know if you can see where I'm pointing my cursor. Okay. Those would just be converted to live workspace, which would just turn to a just vanilla box for right this second. It would be arranged so that it would be accessible to the public, probably for either a professional setting or maybe a retail setting. But I could see like some office space or some.
So it's feasible.
Yeah, kind of like
A couple of those spaces are basically like nobody's actually living there. It's just.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of maybe they're not living there full time, but maybe it's like more crash patty. Or if someone's living in the city and they're coming up, it's maybe more of a pied-à-terre type of layout than it is like a full, like, you know, 4-person family living in there.
Mm-hmm.
Is my guess. I think we've kind of looked to see what how things shake out over at 104 South Williams to see how those live workspaces are configured, and I think draw some inspiration from what's best practice and what works in this type of setting. But, you know, I think we recognize the importance of having the ground floor be commercially oriented.
Right. Oh, right. And just to comment, I love the idea of using modern look and modern materials. I think having a blend is great. You know, it makes just adds to the variety of the architecture here, you know?
Yeah, for sure. There's, you know, there's a lot of brick and wood cornice in Newburgh. There's no shortage of that. So how can we introduce something new and modern? And what REA has done in Beacon is really spectacular. I know there's the Kearney development that's happening there, and that there's a very specific, distinctive style to that kind of development. I think we try to go more into a little bit more modern rendition of all of that.
To that end, are you looking for any historic tax credits as well, or you can't get them because of what's left of the building?
Yeah, no, that's why we had to. That's why we're using the PLP program, which has changed a little bit. Its parameters to include infill. development. And no, there's a demolition permit issued by the ARC on this building because they wanted the developer to feel free to kind of think fresh without the constraints of working with, let me see, this, which, you know, has very little value at this point. It's just,
We did
Um,
try to spend some time on saving the building, and it was after kind of several months of talking to the architect and the SHPO people that we determined that it just wasn't financially viable to do so, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think I recall, Philippe, you saying that to me several months ago when you first started getting into this, that that was your initial thought, was to try to save it. But I think everybody that's been looking at that thing for the past 8 or 9 years knows that there's some places you can save and some you can't. You know?
yeah, it's just brick by brick. They've been kind of making their way to this bottom of the pit, and there's just not a whole lot safe. The historic tax credits would make, if they were available to this project, would be incredibly beneficial. But in order to have them, you couldn't have a building of this scale.
So you also said in one of the slides that you were looking for the pilot to exist at the same time as, what is it, the loan, or what was the timing for that?
Right, to match the affordability period. So for new construction, affordability, the home fund is 20 years, and the PLP program is 30 years at this point. So
That means those units are restricted for 30 years to be
right.
affordable.
To 100% of AMI. So currently that's basically 120 grand a year, $150,000 a year. And
100% or 120%?
120.
Just to be clear on that we can send you a term sheet on the PLP program. There's other restrictions. That's kind of the broadest one there, and there's also another 80% AMI restriction on the specific units that are earmarked for it. So it's not as simple as just the 120, but that's kind of the highest number it would go to.
And you're looking for a tax pilot to last 30 years and to reduce property taxes?
Well, I don't know if it's to reduce, but instead of, to basically to find an equitable middle ground to be able to offer the lenders visibility and certainty with regards to the exposure to property tax. In a year like we just had, it's easy to understand why someone who's lending $3.5 million wants to know that from literally one day to the next, the property taxes aren't going to double on the project the way they have this year. I mean, sure.
But you know, that's a loaded gun, because you're talking to people who are paying the lion's share of their property tax in the city and are looking for development to help offset that. So I certainly understand the uncertainty. I mean, my taxes are otherwise $30,000 on this piece of property here because we don't have enough economic development. So
yeah, no, I understand the where we pay a lot of property taxes in Newburgh and elsewhere. So we're familiar with 83 Broadway as an address to send checks to, and we sent the big ones ourselves. It's, I think, the nature of this scale of development that there be that the developer be able to deliver to the lender certain assurances with regards to the income and the expenses of the project. And
I think that's how we all have to look at it, is we're not, I think we all know that a flat 30-year pilot is pretty unrealistic, right? But like having a pilot for some term that has sort of, just like you said, certainty in what the increases and what the phase in is going to be. I think that, after all the due diligence and everything, as long as that all passes muster, that's more where this is going to end up. If I can,
Absolutely.
guess,
Yeah, I think
it's not a question of saying you're not paying property taxes for X period of time. It's a question of you and the lenders having an assurance of what those payments are going to be.
yeah, for sure. And yeah, it's not like, it seems like the way pilots have been historically used in the city of Newburgh is, tax avoidance. Like, I don't think, I can guarantee you that is not the motivation for this, and it wasn't for 96 Broadway, and it won't be for
Of
this
course.
project. The idea is to be able to give, to present a profit and loss pro forma statement to the lender,
Right.
the state, to the county that's realistic about the financial viability of a project like this. And it's, it's a response, it's a fiduciary responsibility that we have to our investors, and in my opinion, the community as a whole. We're saying we want to offer quality, affordable housing. We need to make sure that we can do that and not, make, oh yeah, we'll do it. And then 10 years from now, the taxes go up on the property, and the CPC has to foreclose on it, and it's not viable. So it's just prudent financial planning. And
Listen, Philippe, I completely understand as a developer myself, but that's that's real estate for all of us. People are foreclosing all over the place because that's happening for taxes and nobody has assurance. And I'm not gonna, I don't want to argue with you about it, but that, this is the biggest crux of the situation in Newburgh. We are not specifically a tax board. We are more geared towards jobs, but as our fiduciary responsibility towards the city and making it sustainable and trying to get new development, as we are all trying to encourage. Along with that comes jobs and inherent taxes to help make it sustainable. So because it's, on free market rate rental, residential, commercial, there is no assurance. And believe me, I know I would love to have assurances on all of my properties as well as to the taxes, but they go up every year as well. And I know who your lender is, and I know, what they're pushing for.
well,
But
and the pilot, in a well-designed pilot, I think would also increase from year to year. And I think, on a typical, the way that maybe other developers might seek to use the tax code to their benefit is to have this as a 485A, where they would pay essentially $2,000 for the next 5 years in taxes. And I think, and so the city short term basically gets nothing, while the investor, basically, it's an interest-free loan, right? It's just sucking as much, cash flow out of the property as it can until such time as it passes it on to someone else. Here, what we'd be proposing is paying, 10 times that in year one. So the city actually gets money up front that it can use to continue sustainable economic development now, when there are no real sources, incremental sources of revenue other than doubling the tax roll, which we agree is not very sustainable. Here is basically offering an annuity to the city now in exchange for something reasonable over, the next 20 years. So
is the land bank paying for the demolition of the building? You guys getting a clean site, or is that part of your infrastructure?
No, what you see right here is what you get, and not a lot of, so they have spent money in the past to stabilize this site.
Right.
Unfortunately, they don't have much to show for it. But you know, but so here we are. You know, like this is the classic Newburgh story, right? Of like, here's an opportunity to do, you know, some heavy lifting. Are all the stars going to align? So, you know, we don't know. We haven't been awarded the project. There are other developers who have done work on Washington Street, who have done work on Renwick Street, who have submitted an RFP for this project. There are others that we don't know. And so we're just, you know, this is the type of work we like to do. And it's a challenge, it's an opportunity. And, you know, we're basically going back to the well of the people that we've worked with successfully in the past to basically line up and get, you know, plant the seed. September rolls around. If September rolls around, we have, you know, something that's already been planted that, you know, we can talk more in more detail about, and, you know, there's more sort of concrete plans about which direction this can go, if it's really economically feasible for the developer, for the lender, for the city. But, you know, I believe that a pilot of some sort or another would be required to pull off a development of this size and scope. And I think working with you guys as people who understand how pilots work, their benefit, you understand real estate, the pros and cons, the responsibility. We'd rather go this route than with the city or the county. And so that's why we're talking to you guys first.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns for Philippe and crew?
Did the land bank say when they would be announcing the chosen party for the RFP?
Specifically, I think, no, I don't remember a specific date being shared. But yeah, you know, we would love, as part of our, you know, as we prepare with the other parties to this idea, we'd love to be able to share with them that we've discussed this with you guys, if that's okay. Obviously, you're not committing to anything, but we really appreciate your time to hear this idea through. And you know, if you guys have any questions or, you know, specific requirements or things that you guys would like, homework essentially for us to work on, for you guys to be able to consider this project in earnest, you know, we're taking notes, and we'd love to work on that while you guys are on summer session.
I think the ground floor use and the job creation and the specific, you know, when you're able to iron that out more, that's something that we would really like to see.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And just a quick note on that, it was originally in those floor plans I shared earlier. Those were commercial spaces. Both of them, those were two different commercial spaces, storefronts. One was 600 square feet, the other was 900 square feet. The way the PLP funding works is it could be applicable to live work. So we basically were able to find $100,000 of subsidy by turning them into live work. Depending on how the project works out, we may be able to just have those as strict commercial spaces. And if that's one way to get this over the edge with you guys, we want to consider that.
Yeah, I think there needs to be some sort of job reliability for us to defend a pilot. So a pied-à-terre with an occasional, crash pad in and out as an office space, we can't write into a pilot contract as definitive jobs.
Yeah.
And also the IDAs, we, generally do not do retail. So it's tricky. And
Do you not do retail?
no. So there needs to be a way to figure this out with a little bit more clarity, which I realize you don't know at the moment. But as this works its way through, I think the linchpin for us is more so what you do with the ground floor and how that works in line with our policies and what we do as an IDA.
That's fair. Yeah, for sure. Would cottage industry be more amenable?
I would defer that question to Bob.
So generally, the director's correct with retail. It's very difficult under the IDA statute. There are exceptions. You should submit an application when ready so that we can take a look at it a little bit closer than just a hypothetical. And I'm happy to chat with you about that anytime.
The city of Newburgh has specific cottage industry zoning designation, so which has been used in spaces that, but they've been used to kind of move away from retail, which is kind of more of a maker space. Would be kind of like a more modern way to describe cottage industry, but it is a specific zoning that the city of Newburgh has, and I just wonder if approaching it that way.
Yeah. Not to cut you off, I'm sorry. It's more of a question of the IDA statute under the general municipal law, whether the retail facility fits within a box. There is an advantage to being in a distressed community, which checks off a box. The question then has to be, what exactly is the retail location? What is it creating? Is it consistent with the overall plan of the site and the overall plan of the community? So, it's not a no. It's just a more in-depth, I guess, review, if that's the right phrase. And we really just need specifics to take a look at it to see if it fits within the box, not of the Newburgh code, but rather the general municipal law provisions restricting retail facilities.
Isn't the retail piece essentially because when the IDA statute, when they were creating it, it didn't want to benefit some retail locations to the detriment of other competitors, kind of thing?
It evolved. Yeah, that's exactly right. It evolved over time, and so there are exceptions. And various clients in the past have addressed it in different ways. There's one up outside of Albany near the hill towns that did approve a hardware store because the closest hardware store is 30 miles away in the city of Albany. So that makes a lot of sense, but they went out and they caused the applicant to do a whole study as to where were people buying their hardware goods to justify putting in giving a financial assistance to a retail location. So the advantage that Newburgh has is that it's a distressed community, which checks off a box in the IDA statute. The question then becomes, can you check off the other remaining boxes? Maybe yes, maybe no. But we just need more specifics, and that would be in the application.
Well, and also we wouldn't be giving benefits to a retail establishment. We're giving benefits to the creation of commercial space, and the retail establishments would have just as much.
Right, and the other advantage here is that this is proposed a mixed use. So it's not just creating a retail location, it's creating housing with a retail location.
Like Philippe's not opening a hardware store or fashion boutique. He's
It's not a box store.
providing a space which presumably would be filled with something that will fit within the area just by market forces. It'll be rented out by somebody that sees a business opportunity.
Right. Right.
And it's market rate rent, right, for the commercial spaces, Philippe, right?
Yep, that's what we'd aim to do. And is office better than retail in the box checking of the IDA statute?
Well, I don't think it's. I mean, if you just say commercial space, something like that,
Okay.
it's fine. I mean, like Bob said, retail is not a death knell. You know, it's just have to kind of dance around because the IDA statute, the IDA statute was really against giving a retail store benefits. You know what I mean? Not necessarily the creation of commercial space, which would then be populated by whatever industry made sense in the area. And it just happens to be on a main street where retail is the sort of industry, if you want to call it that has a main street in the city. So I'm not super worried about that point. I think we've got enough brains in the room that, you know, that can be figured out.
Great. Any other questions?
No, I think.
I do have one question, not to poke. Did this really not work as market rate?
We couldn't get it to work.
Okay.
Well, and that's what the pro forma would presumably show, right?
Yeah. Market rate, yeah, no, not. There is no more rent to extract from a 2-bedroom in Newburgh than 1650. So if you take away the $1.8 million subsidy, then you have a $1.8 million hole.
Yeah, I'll say it so Christy doesn't have to, though, but that's now, right? So in 5 years or 10 years, you know.
I just want to, we have a complex in Beacon. A 2-bedroom apartment is $2,700. Granted, we're not Beacon, but right, to your point, Austin, we will be locked into 120% of AMI for 30 years. I understand how the numbers work. This is why.
I mean, yeah, but generally speaking, there's an affordable housing problem.
Okay, I don't think that this is the place to get into that debate.
Yeah.
Because there is also a bigger tax problem than an affordable housing problem. But I think, you know, our charge is jobs. And so as a residential complex, you know, there are jobs that are being created through construction, but not long-term jobs. Through residential, commercial is the only place. And to justify tax pilots, there needs to be sizable jobs created to justify that. Is my understanding.
We will aim to demonstrate all of that, and you know, I think we have a lot of experience creating jobs in Newburgh on this corridor within 100 feet of this particular location. Long-term, good-paying jobs to local residents, and that's why I think we are the right developer to take on a project like this. You know, there weren't a bunch of people lining up to take this one on. And, you know, it may just be that nobody does actually want to do it because the lift is so heavy. And maybe someone does want to come along 5 years from now. Or maybe they won't. But the here, the now, and, you know, with the tools at hand, I think a project that demonstrates, just like 96 Broadway did to, I think, a whole swath of people who didn't believe that development was, you know, ripe to happen in Newburgh. And this, I think, signals possibly that even more is possible in Newburgh. So we have taken up a lot of your time, so I want to thank you. And we'll interact with Cher and see if the timing is right for us to prepare an application so that you guys have, you know, something to consider for September. Obviously, there's a whole site control issue, but in our experience, these applications can take a long time. So the sooner the better in terms of, you know, getting a green, orange, or red light from you guys is gonna, you know, give us a path, you know, forward or not. So we want to get that started sooner than later. So.
Great. All right, sounds good.
All right,
Thank you very much. And Carly as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. It's Mr. Hovey. Where's Doug? There he is. Hi, Doug.
Good evening, everybody. How are you, Austin?
All right. Good to see you.
Yes, hi, Cher. How are you?
Good, thank you.
All right, everybody. This is Doug Hovey, the president of CEO, whatever top position title you give yourself of Independent Living. A really great organization that's been around for longer than Doug would probably like me to suggest since he founded the place. He's interested in the couple random parcels we have on West Street. So Doug, I'll let you take it away.
All right, great. So just a little background. Independent Living, we were founded in 1987 and provide support services to elderly and disabled people. I've got about 725 employees currently, and that number keeps growing. You may be familiar with one of our housing complexes, Independence Square, right over on the corner of Lake Street and Washington Terrace. We have 75 1-, 2-, and 3-bedroom apartments there. It's a family-style housing. It is workforce housing. Very successful project. We had 850 applications for 75 units. We have a wait list currently of about 427 people as of recent last week, and we check those numbers on a regular basis. So we were 2 years ago did a presentation before the city council regarding 55 West Street, interested in purchasing the 6 parcels in that subdivision. The city at that time seemed to be somewhat receptive to the idea of us building somewhere approximately 200 to 250 housing units there. Since that time, there's a financial group out of Westchester, an investment group, that purchased 4 of the 6 lots, which made it very difficult for us to acquire the entire subdivision. However, there are 2 lots. One is owned by the city of Newburgh, and we're talking with the city, and then one is owned by the IDA. So if you're familiar with West Street and the approach to 55 West Street, as you come into the complex, there are 3 lots on the left and 3 lots on the right. The lot at the top on the right-hand side, which is owned by this investment group, they're called Wood Hills. There's a building there that was constructed in 2007. It was intended for medical offices. It's been vacant for at least 10 years, if not longer. It's in pretty rough repair right now. We're interested in buying that building as well. Can everybody hear me?
I hear you, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got having some screen problems here. But as I said, this group bought it. But if you're entering that complex on the left, the IDA owns that first parcel of land. And I believe there are some environmental issues there that are still outstanding. We seem to have some conflicting records from the DEC on that, but I believe there's still some issues. So what we'd like to be able to do, given that those 4 lots are now owned by this investment company, we'd like to purchase the lot at the top of the complex on the left-hand side across from the building. And I did send a copy of a concept plan. I don't know if you, everybody got to see that. I don't know, Cher, if you were able to distribute that to the members. But what we were proposing at this point is 42 units and 48 parking spaces on that city-owned lot, which is really, again, it's across from the existing building up there, which is owned by the investment company. So there would be 42 housing units, primarily 1, 2, and there may be a potential for a couple of 3-bedroom units, and 48 parking. We would target working families, so it would be another workforce development complex similar to Independence Square, but a smaller scale project. Now, ideally, if this were to go through and we were to develop 42 units, we would continue to try to negotiate for the remaining units to build some additional units if that made sense at that particular time. So right now we're interested in, you know, acquiring the city-owned lot up at the top and the IDA lot on the left as you enter the complex, with a vision of creating 42 units at this point in time. We would be interested in a pilot similar to the previous presenter. We do have a pilot now at the Independence Square complex. And, you know, again, we would target individuals who are working. There would be a few set-asides for either elderly or disabled people in partnership with the New York State Office for the Aging or the Office of Persons with Developmental Disabilities. We have a partnership with them now for the Independence Square complex. So 75 units, 16 of those are set aside for people with developmental disabilities. And the State Office of Persons with Developmental Disabilities provides a subsidy for those 16 individuals, and we provide support services that enables those developmentally disabled individuals to live successfully in the community. So that's just generally the concept. We didn't want to go too far into developing anything, obviously, until we had some sense of where the city stands relative to a project like this and where the IDA stands. So we're, you know, approaching you, and as I said, we're talking with the city of Newburgh as well.
How many units would you get off the IDA parcel, and do you need the IDA parcel in order to make the city parcel work?
We really don't absolutely need the city parcel. I mean, the ultimate goal would be to, when
You mean
you
the
look
IDA parcel?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I can share the map, and that way we understand better what we're talking about here. So let me just share my screen.
You just said you ultimately don't need the city parcel. I think you meant you don't need.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. No, we do need the city parcel, because that's where we would be building the complex. But we don't necessarily need the IDA. But ideally, we would like to redesign the road system with the cooperation of the city to better accommodate additional housing units in the future.
So I think just to be clear, because I've had time to look at this, correct me if
Can you explain to us what's there?
Yeah, so this is our property here that Doug has in question. Do you see my little cursor?
Yep.
Okay, so we have this, we have these two down here, and we have this one. Cassidy Street and like Keefe Street really don't even exist. Those are, they're mapped there, but they actually don't exist. For the conceptual plan of what Doug is proposing, this is what's in question here. And this, in relation to the tax map, is this lot right here. I can't duplicate the view in my
no, I get it.
of Adobe, but you know, this here is basically this here. So to answer your question, Chrissy, do you need our lot here and these lots to do this lot here of housing? So Doug, I'll let you carry the conversation from there as far as explaining, you know, the relationship between your project here and Wood Hill here. Like, I guess my question is, these lots still remain, they still remain in ownership of this here, and would, you know, your property or your proposed project here on the Sea of Newburgh lot has nothing to do then with what would be across the proposed road here?
That's correct, right. Not
And
for
can
that.
you also add what is, we have these 3 little lots, these IDA lots. What's next to them? Who owns these other little lots around us?
These are, this should be how, like, I don't know what this is here, but this should probably be, this is all housing here. I'd have to click on these, but this is basically just a wooded area. If you look on the GIS map, that these are not, the streets don't exist.
But so somebody owns lot 51, 48, 52, 53, 58, 50, these little lots around us on supposedly Keefe and Cassidy Street. Those are privately owned?
I don't know who owns them off the top. I have clicked on this GIS map and like clicked on the different owners in the past. And I've done aerial views. I just know that there is, you know, they're wooded lots. Really, 48 might be owned by, you know, somebody next.
So we don't know who owns those properties.
No, and Doug, you don't own them. And are you looking for these 3 random little properties? You're just looking for the big 26.1 up in the top of the proposed road?
So, yeah, the 26.1, the city of Newburgh owned lot. It's actually 2.7 acres at the top of the circle on the left. We would be interested in acquiring that lot. We're not interested in those other lots, 49 and 50 and 48. They're not necessary for the scope of our project. But
you are looking for 26.1, the one at the top of our top right-hand corner of our screen, which the IDA owns.
Correct. Yes. Right. So, I mean, our initial phase would be to build 42 units. We would like to negotiate with the investment company that owns the other 4 lots to develop additional lots. If we were successful at doing that, then we would redesign that road system to better accommodate the needs of the subdivision. I mean, we would be responsible for the entire road. I mean, there's a lot of work that's got to be done to get that road up to code at this point. The drainage systems need to be reworked. Obviously, it needs to be repaved, so there's another layer of macadam that has to go in. And then, of course, there are some environmental concerns that would need to be cleaned up, so we would take on that responsibility as well.
Is the city doing an RFP for this lot, or how is the city working with this lot?
No, they're not RFPing that lot at this time. I don't know what their vision is at this point. You know, as I said, we presented to them 2 years ago, and they were very receptive to the concept of us buying the entire subdivision and working with us. But since that time, or shortly thereafter, was when this investment group came in and bought 4 of the lots.
Can you tell me what 4 they own?
Yeah, they're identified right on the map.
1, 2.
Woods Hill one, Chrissy.
Oh, Woods Hill. I see. I see. Okay, so you guys currently don't own any of these lots.
Correct. That's correct.
Just to answer your questions, so 51, 52, 53, and 48 are all owned by individuals. Hamilton Berger, John Flannery, and 2 by Joseph Oliva. I'm just looking at the GIS now. The big one, 60, I think it is.
Yeah.
That's Richard Campbell.
So all of this is potentially contingent on you being able to get these lots from
That's all
Woods.
vacant.
That's right.
Have you been in discussion with them? Have you talked to them at all?
the city of Newburgh, we just resumed discussion. So we have not presented to the city council yet. So that is
No.
something that-
I mean Woods Hill. Have you talked to them?
Oh, well, we've been talking to the real estate agent, Chris Strabelli, who's listing the properties for them. So they are for sale. We've been negotiating the price on them.
So I might be confused. The plan for the lot that is owned by the city of Newburgh, can that, or is the plan for that to stand alone and you might do more if you can get the ones from Woods Hill?
That's right. That's
Okay.
correct. Yeah. Yeah, we don't need those 4 lots. It'd be nice to have them because we would build additional units. And as I said, we would redesign that road system. But in the absence of owning those 4 lots, we wouldn't have control of the road system.
So what is the hope for the ID? What is the hope for 26.1 then? Because you're here and we're over here, and I'm just trying to see how they connect or relate to each other.
Well, but keep in mind, that's part of the negotiation. We're actually talking with the city of Newburgh. We're talking with the representative for Woods Hills. And we're talking with you about the potential of acquiring the IDA controlled lot as well. So the step 1 or phase 1 would be to develop the 42 units. But if we're able to purchase the additional lots, we would develop some more units.
Okay, so to piggy off of what Austin said, basically your project stands alone with 54.2, this lot. In the event that you're able to negotiate with all these other lots, then you would just like to know the IDA's position on selling you 26.1 and these other ones here, if and when that time arises.
Hey, Doug, I don't, if you guys don't mind that I interrupt, it was my firm and I that actually did that investigation of what was called 48 Orchard Street. That's the city of Newburgh owned property. So I'm very familiar with all of the environmental issues that are associated with that property.
Great.
And it was done through the environmental restoration program. And right now, the only allowable uses moving forward in the future are commercial and industrial reuses based on the existing cleanup plan that was proposed, but that could be modified fairly simply and straightforwardly. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you, but now is not the time. But I know everything there is to know about that property, just about literally. So, and we have the reports, although the city actually has all the reports and you can get them from the DEC as well. But, feel free to use me as a resource if you feel like it.
I appreciate it. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Yeah, we did have a few reports, but there seemed to be one conflicting report that I understood was resolved, but there still seemed to be some question about some outstanding environmental issues down on the lower lots.
Mm-hmm.
Austin, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to put on your economic development hat. But aren't city-owned parcels, don't they have to go through an RFP? Aren't you guys sort of in charge of putting them out?
It's certainly best practices for the city-owned parcels to go through an RFP. Technically, I don't think a municipality has to do an RFP as long as they're disposing of it for fair market value. But yeah, I mean, if they're seeking to encourage a particular use or they want to, it definitely is best practice to do an RFP. I don't think we have been, I guarantee you that our committee hasn't been talked about this parcel at all. Ally hasn't brought it up to us. I just don't know. I mean, we've done so much of our focus on the east end of Newburgh, it might just have to do it.
I mean, I would just say, and you've heard my spiel previously, our charges jobs, and I think, the IDA, like a lot of these other agencies, are coming under a lot of scrutiny for, sort of our practices. And so any parcel that we release, we would also do an RFP on. and are looking, for pilot, for applicants for pilots, sort of what kind of job creation is being produced to either sell a piece of land or to issue a pilot.
Yeah,
And long-term jobs, not just construction jobs.
sure. Construction's always going to be short term. Our Independence Square project was put up in 12 months, obviously provided jobs during that 12-month period. And then there were several subsequent jobs that were created as a result of whether it's the support services to the people who live in the building or just the management company that provides the staff who run the day-to-day operation. The combination of programmatic support employees that are needed for complexes like this, and the operations staff who run the day-to-day operations.
Well, I would say keep us posted. And again, we would be looking for proposals on how many jobs would be created to review pilot applications or land sale applications. Correct? Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, part of I think our to dispose of property, to have, we would need to do the RFP, and we would also have to get appraised. So as Austin said, so, if and when we reach that period of time, like, we be prepared to know that those are two other that we would have to take in that process. And I think, just keep us up to date with any conversations that you're having with the city. When you do, I know planning and development has all kind of, they're not really accepting, I don't know how much they've opened up since this whole pandemic has happened, but, if and when you've spoken to codes or, what they're allowing there, then please keep us up to date on those conversations.
Okay, yeah, and we'll be meeting with the city of Newburgh again, and then of course the development company. But we will circle back, and I'll be getting back to the IDA as well to talk about the progress. So we're just sort of putting this thing together right now. It's more in concept, but we probably would have moved on this 2 years ago, but as I said, this other company came in and bought 4 of the main lots. But we will continue to communicate with you and let you know where we are in terms of our own internal progress, and see what the city would like to do and what you're interested in supporting moving forward.
Sure. All right, great. Thank you very much, Doug. We appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much.
No problem. All right. Oh boy. All right. I will take a motion to go into executive session to discuss matters relating to the disposition of real property and pending litigation.
I so move to go into executive session for all those reasons.
I have a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Nancy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carried. By the way, for the purposes of the record, we're obviously inviting the Cooney crew into executive session with us. So anybody with the last name Cooney or that's helping Cooney on the project and is welcome to come in.
So I'm going to pause the recording now.
Yes, out of executive session.
I so move to
Move we
come
come
out of
out.
executive session.
I'll second.
Then Nancy second. Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Abstaining, motion carried. All right, Sherry, you can resume recording.
Are we back on?
Yes.
Okay. So to the board, just as part of my council's report, I just wanted to report that the St. Luke's redemption transaction that we discussed at the May meeting is no longer proceeding. And I'll keep the board posted if as and when it comes back on in a timely fashion.
All right. And no other decisions or votes were taken. And with that, I think we're ready to, well, some of us are ready to go eat dinner because they haven't yet. But I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Marlon. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Nancy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carried. Thank you all very much. This is another one of those meetings that makes me really happy to be a part of this board because we have like